Welcome everyone. Welcome to FIDE Online World Cadets and Youth Championship. There've been exciting couple of days and we have some more. So today is the day of the semifinals. So only 4 players left in each age category. So to remind you, we have 10 tournaments running simultaneously. So it's open and girls section for under 10, under 12, under 14, 16, and 18. So altogether, we have 40 players nowadays. At the present, like 40 players competing. I've lost count how many countries left. Yeah, so as I was saying, day one of the finals that started with a lot of players representing, I don't quite remember the number of countries, but you have to believe me, it's a lot, right? So the final stage was represented by, like the biggest representation was by United States of America, and then India, Russia, like all the top countries. And we also got some really exotic players, so to speak, from African continent and so on and so on. We already seen quite a lot of surprises during those 2 days of the final stage, so last 16 and the quarterfinals, like for instance, under 18, Andrei Yesipenko, the huge ELO favorite, was eliminated by the player from Iran, Ghulam Yarimi. Right, so let me see if I can get the game going, because the one that I have on my screen actually kind of doesn't really start. Okay, for this we will talk a bit later. There've been seemingly a slight incident in under 18 group, at least what I was informed, that one of the players was possibly suspended, and we will only know at the final days, which is tomorrow, who's going to be the finalist and what will be the final decision. So boys under 10, let me start here. So Václav Finek, I was praising the guy on day one, right? So under 10 and already rated 2360, so one of the huge favorites, of course. Here, no surprises just yet. A Grunfeld defense, so those little kids, they actually play like, like a series grandmasters. So Grunfeld defense with G3. Dare I say that's considered to be not the most dangerous moves order for white. Yeah, and black typically is advised to capture on c4 pre-castling. Well, in fact, both sides castled, so black castled short, and so did white. Now, so once again, the move is d takes c4, or if you're more into, slightly passive but very solid positions, you can also play c7, c6, keeping it solid, basically. Right, so second semifinal in the same under 10 category, much more, the position is much sharper. So once again, white went for g3 setup, but this time it turns out it was not the Grunfeld but the King's Indian, right? So the King's Indian with g3, that's one of the key positions, I believe. We don't really have to discuss what has happened previously. E takes, knight to c5. That's the way they were playing the King's Indian at times of David Bronstein, like 70, 80 years ago. Rook to e1, c7, c6, queen c2, and then, at least I thought that the move here was a7, a5. Black instead went knight f to d7. Well, makes perfect sense, hitting the knight on d4. After bishop e3, black goes knight to e5, and white replied with bishop f1. Surprising, to be honest, because I don't really see what's wrong with, with b2, b3 here. So bishop f1, looks somewhat artificial, if you ask me. I mean, there is, once again, nothing wrong with putting the bishop to f1. And as far as I can understand, white is planning for b2, b4, right? So that's why he doesn't want to play b3 and instead goes for bishop f1. But yeah, knight to e6. And okay, so far at least nothing outrageous, absolutely normal position, as you would expect from the, from the world-class players And undoubtedly, those kids are already world-class players. They're competing for the title of the world champion. Right, checking girls under 10 to be even more surprised because we have yet another Kings Indian here. Right, by the way, if I remember correctly, the top seed already got eliminated from girls under 10. So, as I said, there have been a lot of surprises here and there. Right, so that's hybrid Kings Indian, where black kind of postpones knight f6 in order to play early e5 and then to try to go for f5 in one go, not developing the knight on f6, because in a typical Kings Indian, you'd have the knight on f6 and then you have to move it away, play f5, and very often return to f6. So this way, black kind of tries to save some time by going knight e7, bishop e3 castles, queen d2, f5. Well, I have to say that apparently White's actions were not utmost precise here because, yeah, typically, well, it does work for black in terms of handling f7, f5 earlier, but at the same time, white kind of, when white knows that what's going to happen next, this f5 is going to happen, white typically prepares better because what we have in the game, f2, f3, yeah, it's understandable white is not planning to castle short because that'd be very, very dangerous, right? I mean, if you're castling short under the King's Indian powerful attack with f4, g5, and so on, yeah, you're probably not doing the right thing. So I assume at least that white is planning for a long castle. But then once again, the way white puts the pieces, the bishop on e2 in a way of this knight on g1. So f3 takes, pawn on f3 takes one square from this knight's potential routes, right? The bishop takes the other. So unless white is planning knight h3 and then who knows, knight g5 or knight f2, yeah, that does look somewhat uncomfortable for white. Okay, so once again, even though the field has reduced quite a bit, but still, I believe like covering all the games from the semifinal will be a bit too much of a, of a task to accomplish. So I'll switch between these and that to try to find like interesting positions straight from the opening and so on and so on. Right, so boys under 12, just checking. Well, everything is quite solid here. Okay. That is a very, very principled game, by the way. So Jakub Siemen, the top seed in this age category, open under 12, and his opponent is a very, very talented kid from Ukraine at some point like a year ago. So I was approached, I remember, like to work with him a little bit. So that's quite interesting. Yeah, no way I'm claiming that I had any, any training sessions or something, but I'm aware of this play, and he is very, very good. So let's see what happens. So the Karukan to knights variation, knight takes on e4, knight f6, which, according to my knowledge, was not considered to be the most precise, right? So typically black either plays bishop to g4 here or goes knight f6 at once. d4, knight e4, knight f6. Here white, I believe, has to capture on f6 typically. Instead, queen e2, somewhat naive hope for black to go knight d7, where knight d6 will be a checkmate. Yeah, there have been games like that, but yeah, it's unlikely to happen on this, and no pun intended, on this very high level, in fact. So queen takes, queen to a5 in order to develop the bishop to f5, bishop c4, bishop goes to f5, queen e2. As far as I remember, you can't really capture on c2. That's super dangerous. White just castles, and you have to spend a lot of tempi. So therefore, knight d7 is much more solid. Castle's short. Now capturing on c2 is simply impossible because of d3, and then this bishop is kind of lost, has to go to a4, and once again, white has a huge initiative. So bishop to g4 is, much more solid. Bishop to g4, white goes d4, and queen went to h5. Queen h5, bishop f4. Now white allows bishop f3. Not that he had any option not to. So perhaps f2, sorry, h2, h3 was the alternative where black can take and go knight e5, hitting the queen and the bishop. In case of queen h5, he'll play g6 and then eventually capture on c4, equalizing the game. But now with queen on h5 and the opportunity to take on f3 when needed, black might actually hope for, maybe not the advantage, but a very, very entertaining game where he also going to have a chance to win. So queen to h5, and I would not suggest capturing immediately, so perhaps e6 to start with. And then if you are forced to capture, then of course you proceed to take on f3, you swap the queens if white recaptures on f3 with the queen, and then thanks to better structure, black can be very optimistic about the rising endgame. Black actually decided to take on f3 immediately, so somewhat impatient but understandable decision. So my worries in this case were that if, say, white captures on f3, black goes e6, and perhaps it doesn't work, but you have to be cautious about various bishop e6 sacrifices, like bishop takes, pawn takes, queen takes, and so on. Right, white has taken with the queen, so now after the queen swap, you just go e6 with black and possibly g6 later, and you have a very flexible structure and perhaps no worries whatsoever. Right, there was boys under 12, girls under 12. To be honest, I do not know any of the players. Well, perhaps in one of the semifinals, I've heard of Alexandra Shvedova. I think, it's not like I'm following the youth chess very, very, very closely, mostly commentating on kind of high-profile events, but I bet it should, because in few years those players, those players will be playing all the top events, I can imagine. Right. So here, what was the opening here? It's the Queen's Gambit, the classical one. The opening of the world champions, as they say. F3, bishop goes to h5, knight g2. Black is just on time to play bishop g6 before white actually goes knight f4 and swaps the knight for the bishop. Here, queen c2 looks like a bit of a waste, to be honest, because black would inevitably take on d3 anyway, so queen going to c2, then capturing on d3 might end up, white might end up losing a tempo, but still, it doesn't change the character of the position all that much. Yeah. So as you see, queen c2, then capturing on d3, white could have gone knight f4 immediately. h6, now you don't really want to go to h4 because of g5, so you trade on f6, you castle, a to d1. Yeah, understandable once again, put the rook to d1 to protect the d4 pawn in order to play e4. Queen to d6, hitting the knight on f4, so once again e4 is not possible, and white has gone knight h5. Knight h5, rook a to d8. And one of those positions where it's kind of, you are taught the plan for white. The plan is obviously to play e4. You're aware of the plan, but now that you're looking at it, and is it actually good, right? Because e4, black's gonna take, you can't really take back because check on d4, so you are capturing on f6, queen f6, you take with the pawn, yeah, you want a pawn center, and after queen g6, it's absolutely unclear what have you achieved here, right? It's a nice pawn center, but there is no follow-up for black, no follow-up for white, and black has some ideas like knight e6 hitting the d4 pawn. So I imagine the position is roughly equal, and if any side has a better prospects, in my opinion, it's black. By the way, yeah, e3, e4 was just played. Okay, getting to the older players. Well, actually, boys under 14, open section under 14, we have two main favorites, two top seeds. Gukesh from India in one semifinal against Denis Lazavic, and Volodar Murzin from Russia against Christopher Yu. Right, so in this age category, both favorites made their way to the semifinal, and yeah, according to what it's called, the tournament net, right? The They can only meet in the finals. And number one and number two, so the top seed and the second top seed can only meet in the final. And in many age categories, we actually won't have such a final because, as I said, Yosipenko under 18, the top seed under 18 got eliminated in the in the younger ages. A lot of top seeds got eliminated. So it's been a very, very surprising tournament so far. Right, so Gukesh against Lazavic. So what was that? It seems, well, actually almost unrecognizable because I don't know what I was thinking. I was thinking of some Sicilians, which is obviously nonsense because the pawn is on f4, not on e4. It was the London system, in fact. It was the London system, and then capture on f4, ef4. That's how we got to this structure. Later on, black played c5. White decided to capture here and to go c4. Right, so that's the current position here. Rook to c2. Not sure what does that mean. So it's a very, very tricky structure, this one. It's not that easy to understand, I have to say, because optically it seems black is better, and perhaps rightly so, black is better on the queen side. So that's potentially a very strong passed pawn, which currently is blocked, right? Black has the semi-open b file, but, you know, as long as a lot of pieces stay on the board, black can't make any substantial progress here. So rook c2 protects b2, right? So now even if you double on the b file by means of rook to b8, rook to b6, other rook to b8, I don't know in what order, you're still not threatening all that much. And white is preparing the kingside attack, right? So the knight is on e5, the bishop on d3 hits h7, and then even moves like g4, g5, and, you know, f3 shutting down the diagonal and opening the second rank to transfer the pieces to the kingside become possible. So looks very interesting, looks very promising. Looks very promising for white, but of course, those rapid games, they are all decided much later, right? Unless someone really misplays the opening, which is not the case here, those games typically decided much, much later. So we'll check the second semifinal here. Volodar Murzin from Russia with black in game 1 of the semifinal against Christopher Yu. That was... You can actually have it from various openings, and nowadays I believe it's much more common to get this position from the symmetrical English opening, where you start c4, c5, and then white goes e3, and then d4, and so on and so on. But yeah, let's agree that's the position which is classified as exchanged Caro-Kann line in the pawn of attack in the Caro-Kann, right? Bishop to c4, bishop b5 check. A bit of a surprise, to be honest, and a4. Okay. Knight goes here, castles, a6, captures with the queen, to my surprise. That's okay, but I would actually think of capturing, you know, with one of the knights, interestingly. Okay, that's already played. Queen b3, knight to c8, yeah. That one should not be fooled with this one. Yeah, it does look like knight is quite passive on c8, but it is opting for a very good square on d6. So bishop to e3. Just quickly, knight to d5, threatening an obvious fork on b6. Rook to d8, queen to f5, and then knight to e5 and knight to b5. Okay. Despite white having, you know, the space advantage and everything, black's position is far from being hopeless, right? The knight is very nicely, I mean, somewhat unusual, but at the same time very nicely placed on b5, supported by the pawn. So in a way, it's, you know, it's an unusual outpost. I mean, it's not very often when you can say, okay, the knight on b5 is actually an outpost. So guard c7, no rook c7 for white. Yes, stops the d pawn break, controls d4. So black is not without a chance. And the game continued with knight d7. So black tries to swap the knight on b6. Knight g3, queen has to go, and knight to c4. I believe white is doing the right thing, trying to keep as many pieces as possible, because the more you trade, the easier it becomes for the defender, for the side with a less space. So here, obviously, white's pawn on d5 and a5 partially defines, underlines the fact that white has more space, white has the space advantage, and therefore black wouldn't mind trading a pair or possibly two pairs of the minor pieces, ideally leaving himself with the knight on b5 versus the bishop on e3. So that's what I would suggest. And then, then it's black who might be better kind of trying to attack the d5 pawn. Alrighty, so that's a very, very tight. Those are very, very tight semifinals in open under 14 category. Well, the ladies, the girls under 14. Rochelle Wu, I believe, from United States of America with white against Shoka Gal. White is an exchange down, and I have to say I do not see enough compensation. What I'm surprised with is that white is playing extremely fast. Let's not forget the time control. Yeah, I should have mentioned time control from the beginning. The time control is 15 minutes plus 10 seconds. So in fact, white barely spent any time. And I'm wondering where exactly, here exactly white misplayed it. So apparently something went wrong from the beginning, because that doesn't look like any promising position. Like bishop to e8, yeah, okay, you do get the blockade on d4, but it's a clear exchange down. So yeah, I mean, if black is careful, hang on a second, that to me looks like a checkmate in one. If you ask me, that's a checkmate in one. And rook to c1, rook to h5. No, it's not a checkmate in one. There isn't. There is a square on e2. Okay, sometimes even grandmasters are going. So we are waiting for knight e2, and then we play rook d1. Okay, that's better. That's better. Okay, so in fact, before I thought this rook d1 was a checkmate in one, what I wanted to say in a practical game, and especially in the rapid, a black's task is not that easy, you'd be surprised. Because, yeah, you don't really have obvious weaknesses to attack. Knight is known to be a tricky piece, delivering some forks here, there. Like for instance, you go king g7, white plays knight f5 check, and all of a sudden you have trouble, because after king f7, knight d6, in order not to return the exchange, you have to go back to g7, and then it's knight f5, and it's a repetition. Other than that, yeah, really, I don't know. Okay, so rook d1 was actually played, king e2, and I assume black might consider kind of transforming his advantage into something else by capturing on d4, then, important, playing king g7 intermediate, hitting the rook, protecting the pawn, and ultimately, after this rook retreats, I don't know, third rank, first rank, not that important, check on c2, and then win the b2 pawn, ending up being up a pawn in the rook endgame. Not sure whether king, possibly rook h1 and putting the king on the third rank was better, but yeah, black is with very good chance to win. The second semi-final, okay, here it seems black is going for the direct attack. I don't know if it's good or not. So let's leave aside the previous play. Over here, knight g4, knight e2. I really like, till that point, I really like what black is doing. Bishop h6, rook to c3, still okay, but f4, isn't it kind of somewhat overly optimistic? So as far as I understand, after bishop takes, black is planning to capture on g3, fg3, in order not to drop the f2 pawn. And yeah, and then knight f2. Okay, so that's in fact is, yeah, very, very messy, right? Queen to c2, and then at the very least, black can, well, actually, knight e4, queen e4, bishop d2 is, looks sufficient. Black wins the exchange. There is bishop h3 potential. Yeah, black is actually doing the right thing. So after f4, if there is no bishop e4, then it means white actually is in trouble, because all the things like knight takes f2, sacrifice are in the air. Obviously, f3, e3 destroying white's king's shelter. And if you try to swap everything on f4, then bishop takes followed by queen h4 is annoying because black hits 2 pawns at the same time on f2 and on h2, right? So really, really under pressure white is in this game. Boys under 16, and here, if I remember correctly, there have been a huge surprise as one of the top seeds, well, the actual top seed, Vincent Keimer, got eliminated in the previous round. Okay, so here, this looks somewhat familiar, but not really. By the looks of it, I want to say, I mean, as soon as I can see the dark square bishop not having the opponent, the opposition, let's say, I want to say black is okay. Black should be doing great. However, black decided to get rid of the bishop, so he went with a check, captured on d2. I'm wondering what's the follow-up to this. Obviously, black can simply play e5 and prepare to transfer the knight to d4. And it's not like white can do an awful lot. Right, perhaps this is one of the ideas. By going to e6 or b3 in case of, say, no, bishop b2, you can also take the pawn. Yeah, so black is absolutely fine here. By the way, I believe Amir Reza is the guy who actually eliminated Vincent Keimer. In the second semifinal, Andrew Hong from United States and his opponent, Frederick Swane, I presume from Germany. Right here, well, I would say I pick white because of the two bishops, but white has kind of an immediate task to deal with knight d3 threat. Okay, after rook c2, yeah, it's actually clarified. Yeah, rook c2 is good, and then in case of king b8, for instance, hitting the pawn, you do have bishop b3. So white needs just a tiny bit of time. I mean, if he can push this knight away by pushing f4, let's say, and making sure that the knight on d3 is not that annoying, not that painful, then white is, of course, much better, right? Two bishops, more space, everything. Well, so the only concern is if black has some way to disrupt white's further plans. So king b8 sounds reasonable. After bishop b3, I would actually look at moves like g6, g5, trying to stop f4 for now and trying to secure knight's position on e5. Yeah, black is not without a chance here. Yeah, by the way, in the previous game, after e5, white has done what I thought was a very, very clever thing to do. Didn't want to mention it, but yeah, b4, knight e6, and c5, trying to, to use the momentum to open up the position because the side with the bishop typically wants to open up the position. Right, so c5, hoping to use the pin here. Still not sure how it works for white and if it works after king f7, but yeah, but at least you can clearly see that there is something going on and white should not be without a chance. Right, moving on, under 16 in the women's section, girls section. Right, so once again, two biggest favorites and two starts in their age category. So it's Bibisara Asobaeva in one of the semifinals with white in game one, and in the second one, it's Leia Garifulina from Russia. Bibisara represents Kazakhstan, and Garifulina is from Russia. She just finished, maybe a week ago, she joined third in Russian superfinal. Right, so what happens here? To me, it looks like white has a tremendous attack on the black king. Queen c2, rook f6. Yeah, okay, black has played the move. It was rook f6, protecting against the potential sacrifice on g6, and white pushes the f pawn. So f4, opting clearly for f5, right? And yeah, and it seems to be a disaster for black. I don't think black can survive this one. Depends really. I mean, something like knight f8, and if f5, g5, and black somehow is alive here, which I doubt, then it could have worked out for black. Like if black plays h6 and he doesn't lose his queen, then he's okay, but he does lose his queen. So rook to g1, hitting the g5 pawn, if h6, rook h2, and the queen is trapped. Right, it's a very good chance to win for Asabaeva. And then Leia Garifulina might be in a bit of a trouble, I have to say. Leia Garifulina might be in a bit of a trouble with black. So that was something really, really sharp. The Sicilian with queen takes d4, right? Because it looks neither-fee, if you know what I mean, right? So it did look, later on the position did look like the neither variation was bishop g5, but in fact it started as 4 queen takes d4, so anti-Sicilian. Anyway, there have been some really sharp moves here, like black going g5 once again, the idea kind of stolen from knight of Sicilian, capturing knight d7. Well, in this particular case, might have been better to go to g4, but it's okay. Knight g3, captures, rook to f1. So from the positional standpoint, black does more than all right, but he apparently has overlooked queen f3, right? And then, yeah, you can't really do much. You take with the pawn, it's queen f7 and rook to d4, right? Otherwise, queen f7 is just deadly. If you move the rook, knight c6 wins the game. So black was forced to capture on d4, check, king goes here, knight to d5 is a very brave move, I have to say, because some would think, okay, white is already better on material, but not really. If you move the knight to e2, it's rook f8, so knight d5 is, well, similarly is very strong. So very, very inventive play by both players. Bishop to a4, queen e6 check, and d6. Rook to e8. Rook to e8 had to be played. You can't really move the bishop, and I believe white is completely winning. After rook e8, white captures on e7, gives a check, and after bishop e8, rook e8, killing blow. You have to take with the king, where you lose the rook on c8, because this is a very, very beautiful checkmate. So well played by Rakshita Ravi, and Leia Garifulina will have to fight back, will have to try to fight back. Right, sorry, but I'm moving pretty slowly, and only now we got to the, say, to the strongest group, the underrating. I'll start I'll start with the girls. That's interesting because in underrating girls section, well, you have 3 representatives of the United States of America, I believe, potential, or in case of Carissa Ip, she's already a member of national team, and 2 potential members of a national team of United States. So 3 out of 4 top seeds, and all 3 of them made it to the semifinals. So we have Carissa Ip playing against Elizaveta Solozhenkina. That's the position here. Well, tempted to say white is much better. So once again, 2 bishops, king on c7 is pretty unsafe. Well, to kind of Black's hope, Black's only hope is that the bishop on e5 is a very strong piece and somehow will secure some squares, you know, secure some stability for Black. Bishop g2 was played. Alrighty, but you know, that's a lot of pieces, not a lot of time. I believe anything can happen closer to the time trouble. And in the second semifinal, as I was saying, 2 representatives of United States of America facing each other. So it doesn't matter who wins, one of the US girls will be in the final. Well, looking at the position though, roughly equal, I would say. Once again, I don't know what goes through players' minds. Like in my case, if I'd be worried with Black, I mean, how do I am I not worse in this position? How do I survive in this position? One of the methods could actually be a pawn sacrifice. Like after rook c2, just put the rook on the d file. And if your knight is somehow chased away, which is not easy to achieve, like f4, you might as well go knight g4. But in principle, like if you smell anything dodgy, you just go knight c4. Next move, I don't know, white plays a3, for instance, you go knight c4, which, by the way, is not a very clever move, but anyway, yeah, right. And then you've sacrificed the pawn, but you have control over the only open file in the position, so black should be absolutely fine. Right, so let me see. Yeah, okay, instead, black decided to play b6, which is, in a way, more ambitious plan because the knight on c4 is now very well placed. Will depend on the next few moves. Actually, just realized that knight a3 is a threat. I wanted to suggest like a4, a5, which would have been good from structural standpoint, right? But one really has to be careful, especially in online chess. You know, like even much stronger, like top grandmasters sometimes they forget about simple tactics. Like so, knight a3 has to be watched out for. Rook to d1 played and rook to a8, actually stopping a2, a4. Now, looking at it, I have to say, yeah, perhaps it's a chance for black. So white actually has b5. Maybe b5 is what white needs to break the structure a little bit, right? Because so to assure that black is not that stable here. Yeah, after b5, the tables might turn. And ultimately, boys, or open, should I say, open section under 18. And here I have to say that we only have one semifinal going. Because as I said, one of the players got suspended, and I'm not aware what is the final decision taken by the organizers, but well, it obviously will be resolved till the final. Yeah, so we will have the final tomorrow, where only two players going to be playing. But for now, one semifinal is postponed, and the other one is going. So in this ongoing semifinal, Sean Sargsyan, if you remember, on day one, he was struggling. He was struggling to beat his opponent, eventually qualified, then won his quarterfinal match yesterday. Now he is against perhaps the biggest surprise of the tournament, Magdi Golami-Arimi from Iran, who knocked out Andrei Yesipenko. Okay, so what happens here? Well, actually, I just realized that it actually is an equal material. I was wondering what's the material here. It is an equal material. Then I don't quite understand last b4 move. Is there any tactic, guys? Can you see what's the problem with rook takes? Well, perhaps white wants to take the open a file. That's the only reason I can think of, and then put the rook on a7. And then in case of king e7, for instance, go for something like that, like check over there, and then that's a funny line. Knight to d8 check, and then if you go back to d6, knight goes back to f7. If you go to b6, rook b7 all of a sudden wins for white. So if you're ambitious, your only move is king to d7, and then white captures on e6, equalizes fully. Okay. Let me see. No move from Sean Sargsyan. Obviously, he wouldn't mind to play this position for a win with black. Yeah, but it's easier said than done, because white is threatening before b5, right? White is threatening before b5. Unblock the c pawn. Well, possibly king e7 is the move. So look, b5. First off, you still have rook b4, put the rook behind the pass pawn, but it might as well be that you can take, and after c7, you grab the pawn on c7, and you go king d6, double attacking the rook and the knight. So rook to f7, king to e5, rook to g7, you know, even sharper than it was. But perhaps black is unlikely to win in this scenario, because the d pawn, his pride and glory, the passed pawn on the d file, is not too far away from the white's king, so white should be able to stop the d pawn. Therefore, finally, Sean decides to capture the pawn on b4. After rook a1 goes f7, f6, rook to a7. I don't like f7, f6. Honestly, takes on e5, takes on c7. rook to c4. Well, he might be right on the other hand, but yeah, but I don't really see how black makes progress. Like, unless he's planning to crawl with his king to d8 at some point, which is still kind of tricky, right? So white probably should play king f1 to have the king closer to the d pawn. By the way, I just realized Golami Rimi is very, very short of time. He decides against it. He plays h4, which is once again understandable, to try to stop black pawns on the 7th rank. So the logic is like that. If you'd play king f1, black would remove the pawns first. Well, probably starting with h5, then g5, right? So move the pawns forward, then move the king closer to the rook to d8. Right, so h4 kind of aimed at fighting against it. But now you will have difficulties moving the king closer because black has check on c1 and e4, locking the king in some sort of a cage, right? The other question is if black is or isn't able to make progress later on. And that's what Sean Sargsyan is thinking about. Okay, let me see if we've got any results here. Boys under 10, both games finished. So Václav Finek was held to a draw, and Andy Woodward was checkmated with 2 queens. So boys under 10, first game is over. Girls under 10, one of the games in progress, actually. Very, very tricky game. This king's Indian. Yeah, white is completely winning from positional standpoint, right? The bishop is dead on g7. The knight is not much better on b8. So that's, I'm curious to see how this actually will proceed. Queen a7, but yeah, you know, like playing on seconds, pretty much anything can happen. Queen a7 hitting the knight and black has to return. Yeah, that's, I mean, if you have to play a move like queen d8 in this position, that means it's just hopeless. Rook to g7, impressive stuff. Rook to g7. I was thinking of a5, but now I realize rook g7 is much stronger. Bishop to f6. Now, well, just a tiny bit of calculation is needed because if you can go a5, you absolutely should. Rook h7. Why not, on the other hand? I kind of felt that it's quite possible that you don't want to capture because you would give black a possibility to go to a6. Black could have played knight a6 and tried to put the knight on b4. It doesn't really change the evaluation of the position, but you know. Okay, black has played queen c8, then you just return back to c7 with the tempo, or you play, well, g5, clever play. g5 trying to distract the bishop to checkmate the black king. Black, well, perhaps has the only move, which is bishop to h8, and it's almost a checkmate. And then, well, it's still somewhat tricky, right? It's still somewhat tricky. Yeah, bishop h8 is played. Yeah, and sorry, I'm kind of stuck with this game, but it's so, you know, so stressful to watch with those seconds on the clock. Rook to c7, queen h3. Is it the moment where the tables turn? Not really, but if you think of it, white has his battery, his pieces organized on the 7th rank in kind of a wrong order. So even if the queen leaves from the h-file, there isn't a checkmate. Rook b7, now is it good or bad? Black absolutely has to take on f3 in order to, yeah, queen g2, well, queen g2 was a mistake. Queen g2 was a mistake because after king e2, you're left with no counterplay, and also you're losing your b8 knight. Knight to a6, yeah, just queen a6, and black is completely busted. Okay, let me see. Under 12, yeah, we have one result, open under 12, and we have still a fight between Jakub Siemen and Igor Samunenkov. Let me see what's that. Well, actually, it seems that black is making a progress here. Black is making progress here. I wonder if black is just winning. Just take on h2, right? Just take on h2. Bishop to f5 and rook g2. Wow, that's a nice resource. Rook to g2, and then what? It practically makes sure that the rooks are traded, right? And traded on black's terms, so to speak, because you can't really capture on g2. Okay, white goes rook h6, h2, f4. Is it a clever tactical trick? Because after bishop f4, there is a check. Yeah, king h7. But the problem for white is that if he goes king f3, after rook h1, he can't really stop h1 queen. Yeah, I think it's completely winning now. Check on h8. Black is thinking. Simonenko is thinking. Well, he went king c7, which actually makes sense, right? Because now in case of bishop e6, so that after rook g1, white will have bishop d5 and will stop the pawn on h1. Now, in our case, with king on c7, after bishop e6, black as well has king d6. Move is the tempo, also protecting the d5 pawn. Well, so no mystery here. Black is completely winning. It's just a matter of, of technique. Also, white is down to his last few seconds. So let's see what happens there. Well, I don't know. I mean, white did lose on time. So it wasn't, at some point I thought it was a software glitch, but no, white did lose on time. So kudos to Igor. And yeah, we'll see how this unfolds later. Some really sharp battles, girls under 12. Okay, let me see how many games are still in progress. Not that many, it would seem. Open section under 16. Both semifinals are still going on. In the second one, have Frederick Swane is completely winning against Andrew Hong. But here, in the other semifinal, Swane is completely winning. But here it's kind of unclear, right? Knight f6. Black should be winning, right? Black does stop the h pawn. So h6 is the move, king g5, and then in order to get... now there is no way. I thought, yeah, you're trying to get to any kind of counterplay. Yeah, that's actually what white is doing. King to c4, king takes, king b5, trying to sneak in with the king, get some pawns, but yeah, it's not likely that white's going to be on time, right? Because black can already play e4. Case of king a6, you just play e3, bishop goes here, you play d5. Too many tempi and too many passed pawns. So black is certainly winning here. The second semifinal, as I mentioned, for some reason it goes on, but white might as well resign here. And then finally, under 18, Bibisara Asaubaeva is... she's 2 pawns up, but she struggles to win a little bit. Might not be all that trivial. Because the b pawn is, vulnerable. You can't really... Yeah, could it be that it's just a draw? Even for a grandmaster, to assess those rook endings at first sight, it's not easy by no means. Alrighty, yeah. So point being, you get to d7, and then black starts giving you checks from the longer side or whatever it's called. Right, here, boys under 14. Well, I didn't pay attention, but Gukesh is still playing. I thought his game was over like ages ago, but now the game is still on. White is a couple of pawns up, but as I keep saying, in those time troubles, anything is possible. But now white looks winning to me because knight f6 is a tremendous threat. Actually, knight and rook, did you notice, guys? It's such a powerful combo, because you give, say, in this position, you give black a couple of moves, h5, knight f3, and it's already black who threatens a checkmate with rook h1, rook h2, right? But knight f6 and white is one move ahead. So black actually couldn't find anything better but to go to g8 and then to f8 and then to e8 and then back to f8. So that's the current position. Knight e4, knight e6, and then, I mean, if you're confident enough, you actually don't really try to protect the c-pawn, but you wait for black to take it, you swap the knights with white, and then you win with two, with two connected passed pawns. There should be a technical win. Right. So Gukesh, I believe, will win this one. Whoa. That open under 60, under 16. That's still, no, pardon me. I've seen a miniature of this game, of this diagram, and for some reason I had a glitch that it was, it was white knight on b6 instead of black knight, and I thought, okay, how cool it is. Black is a queen up, but white still has a chance, but no chance, obviously. No chance, obviously, and white, black proceeded to win this one. So let me see if, if anything is still in progress. Particularly, I'm interested to see what will happen. Okay, so Gulamia Rimians and Shant Sargsyan made a draw finally. That's the final position. Remember this sharp rook ending that was? Something like that. There was this sharp rook ending, and eventually it moved on to become a pawn ending where black is a pawn up, but white has protected passed pawn himself, the g-pawn, so you can't really help with the king your own pawns to promote. It's a kind of a positional draw of fortress, if you like. Girls under 18, Solozhenkina, by the way, has won. I didn't pay attention to this one, but she won against Carissa Yip. So once again, we might see the upset of the favorites, right? Carissa Yip losing with white. And the second semifinal is still on. Oh yeah, and just the moment I wanted to say, yeah, it's still on. Black did show some technique. Not protecting the a pawn, but just moving the rook to the 8th rank, and that's a notorious knight pawn which you can't really promote. Like if you'd move the whole setup one file to the left, right? So if it would be on f file and not on the g file, then white would have been winning. I mean, at least in this situation, right? While here, I don't know what white wants to achieve. That's an absolutely the situation where you can't really win. Hoping for black to go to a fade, perhaps. That's actually clever. Right, why not? I mean, you go to the f file, and then we have, all of a sudden, we have Lucina position, right? King f8 and king h7. And, okay, and a draw was agreed the moment. Yeah, black actually shown, once again, some knowledge of basic endgames, some technique, went to h8, nicely played. Alrighty, so let me see if we have any games in progress. Yes, we do. Girls under 12 and girls under 16. Asalbaeva apparently is winning. Is she? Hang on a second. I said she's winning. Yeah, okay. Check. Yeah, check and king d6, right? No, hang on. But the rook is on 6th rank, so black can actually play king c7. But then it's a draw, right? Then it's a draw. I don't know what happened. I thought it was completely winning. Yeah, and king e6. That's the current position here, and then you just wait. Then you just wait. King c6. King c6 and king c7, and white can't really do much. Or no, that's nonsense what I'm saying. That's nonsense what I'm saying. You lose because of rook g1, yeah? You lose because of rook g1. So the... wait, not to... so king to c7, rook g7, rook to d8. This and... rook went to h8, rook f7, king to d8. Now it's a draw. Okay, now it's a draw. The game will go on, but it's just a draw. And girls under 12 potentially can play forever because black offered a draw a few moves ago. The position is, of course, is drawish, but, as much as white want, he can try. Here, with black to move, what's the move, guys? Rook to g6 makes a draw on a spot. Rook to g6. I mean, there is no reason to play it because rook h8 is just the same, right? Well, actually, black just played rook h8. Rook g6, because of the stalemate, would have made the draw on a spot. One thing I don't quite understand how you're supposed to lose with black here. Don't know why would you play king e7, by the way. I mean, just go with the rook here and there. King e7, rook f1, back to d8, back to safety. Yeah, okay. Okay, this works as well. Right, so this will be a draw soon. And for the other one, I'm not sure. Oh, well, it actually is a draw. That's yeah, they've just agreed a draw. Here, as I said, that's a drawback of, you know, of the time control with increment. Obviously, to me, increment is the good thing because, you know, you don't lose the position where you rook up, right? So it makes for a little bit more logical play. But the drawback is such situations where, oh, it is a draw, but undoubtedly white is the stronger side. So white can try similarly for as long as possible. And it's not that much of a chess content left in this position, but yeah, obviously, well, and sometimes it would have something to do with, say, player with white having a winning position previously and therefore like being unsatisfied with how the game went, and they're kind of not even planning to win this position because, once again, if you ask me, I have no clue whatsoever what could be the plan to win this position. They'll just wait for an opponent to blunder a piece, basically, to give check. I mean, since it's on internet, you can't even play for impossible move, right? So black can't lose by impossible move rule. Okay, and while I was saying it, they've agreed a draw. That means, well, if I got everything correctly, yeah, that means the round is concluded. Well, won't read all the results out loud because there are too many. For those of you who want to check the results, you can do so on the official webpage of the organizers, world2020.ge, and it's a very convenient website when you can browse by age category and find the results where, let's say, your player, the player you support, the player you're keen to know is. That beat, and I believe we have somewhat around 15 minutes before the start of game 2 of the semifinals. So please allow me to ask for a short break, as I need to, to readjust the software to be able to show game 2. Thanks for watching, and I'm coming back in 10 minutes. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to the second game of the semi-finals FIDE Online World Cadets and Youth Championships, that is. Right, so today, this is the second game that has already started. I have one of the positions on the screen, hopefully. And today, the names of the finalists will be determined. So, as I was saying, it's quite challenging to commentate on 20 games simultaneously. That's a rapid 15 minutes plus 10 seconds to remind you, but I will try to do my best. Okay, so now it's a time for the players to show all the theoretical knowledge, everything. And in this particular game, for instance, and this is not coincidence, I've picked this one. So Igor Samonenko from Ukraine faces the top seed of the tournament, Open Under 12. And he has won game one with the black pieces. So I'm really curious to see what's going to happen in return game, right? So white only needs a draw in order to secure the spot in the final. Obviously, that's, when you're that young, when you're playing under 12 section, well, I don't really think you're thinking in such categories like I should make a draw, I should be solid. So those guys, they just play chess. Right. And interestingly, it's a very long, I'm not coming back because, too many games, but it's a very long theoretical line. So I'm amazed such young players already showing such a deep theoretical knowledge. By the way, A5, I don't know if it's the move. Queen takes a5 seems possible to me, but apparently they know something because black quite quickly played b5, a takes, and bishop b5. And if I remember correctly, you'd be surprised, but this is from, I mean, it looks very similar to the supercomputers match. Lila versus Stockfish, like this spring. I think this position was debated in one of the matches. So where black sacrifices the pawn, and then the line would go, I guess, rook b6 followed by queen b8, and somehow, or queen b6, and then somehow having the pressure on this b2 pawn, black was trying to prove the compensation for a pawn he has sacrificed. So really exciting stuff here with both players seemingly knowing what they're doing. Even like now that I'm checking, even under 10, they play like super sharp theoretical positions. That's absolutely incredible. But let me move on to the older folks. Under, what was it? Boys under 14. It's quite interesting as well, as we have one of the clear favorites in this section, Gukesh. This time with black, he has won his game one, and interestingly, Gukesh is, he he leaves an impression of a very mature player, if I can talk like that about someone who is not yet 14 years of age, because one game one, and then what you do, you play a very solid, Carlsbad with black, the Queen's Gambit, and be solid, and then get this 94 simplifications. Yeah, absolutely amazing. It's not, it's not perhaps the most entertaining of the positions, but remember my words, this Gukesh guy, he is a very talented fellow, and I expect to see him in the upcoming major tournaments in a few years. Right, and for some reason the game got kind of stuck here, right? So, well, typically white captures on e4 goes 92, provokes black to play f7, f5. That's, otherwise it's somewhat, I mean, you'll have to care about this pawn all the time. Bishop f5 can be played, but yeah, typically black plays f7, f5, and then you go for f2, f3 break. Perhaps not outright. You can get the knight to e5, or you can play rook e1 and then go for f3. And yeah, optically it might seem to be somewhat better for white, but black in fact is very solid. Other than that, I'm not aware of any, kind of aggressive plans from white side. With knight being on f3, you can't really go for any kind of f3 e4 breaks, right? So for that you have to have the knight on e2. Right, let me see if there is anything exciting going on right now. Not really, not that I can see anything. Rather, players taking very, like for instance here, that's boys under 16. Frederick Swane won game one with black, right? And now he is taking very practical approach, simply going for four knights d4 line, where it's very hard for black to get any kind of playable position, right? So if white wants a draw, he can reach it. Well, perhaps over here bishop c5 would offer a little bit more offer chances to get the actual game, right? Because here bishop g5, queen f3, just swap everything on f6, get your knight to f5, and it's just, you know, I mean, you can avoid getting like an immediate draw, but then it means accepting a worse position, and much worse position in this case, because not only the bishop on d6 is hanging, but also the pawn on h6. Bishop f4 runs into knight d7, knight d5, or under the circumstances, I can actually say that bishop f4 runs rather into knight e7, knight c8, because this is what black is trying to avoid, right? Getting the opposite colors. So it's very likely that Frederick Swane will make his way to the final. Yeah, then checking girls under 18, where actually that's a very very tough fight, right? Bibisara Sobaewa, the top seed, was held for a draw in round one with white, or rather game one of today. So now she has the black pieces, and she has to be careful because her opponent already has shown how dangerous she can be. Right, and then white went for somewhat of a sideline in the Sicilian, like bishop b5 check. And I don't know if black did everything correctly, because this position looks like one of those what white has in mind when he is going for this line. This is one of those positions where white absolutely loves to play. Put the knight on d5. Well, basically just jump to d5. Always take with the piece here. Yeah, well, I mean, you might consider going to c d5, but I believe knight d5 and then queen d5 is good enough to claim that you, as long as you have the d5 square, you have the advantage, right? Simply because black bishop on f8 is terrible. Right, knight c to d5 played. Black doesn't have all that many options, right? But anyway, with careful defense, perhaps black can save this one or equalize this one, if you like. So no big deal here. However, we do have a big deal in the other semifinal on girls under 16, because once again, the favorite Leia Garifuna, she has lost her first game with with black, sorry. So now she absolutely needs to try to strike back with white. And looking at the position, I would not be all that optimistic. She's playing very fast, so it might be, it might be the sign of confidence, but honestly, in online chess, much more often it's the sign of the opposite, when you're kind of a little bit in despair. Yeah, because I don't believe like you know your opening till move 20, unless your name's Magnus Carlsen. Right, so it's somewhat resembles, kind of somewhat reminds me of, what do you call it, the Marshall counterattack, right? But with the only difference that white actually didn't have a chance to grab the pawn on e5. Okay, that was the moment. That actually was the moment where white could have taken on e5, but this is known to be a very promising position for black. And now I'm not sure if it's b4 to start or an immediate d5 also might be the move. Right, and after bishop a2, black actually is just on time. Yeah, knight e2, just on time to play d5. Take with the bishop. You can't take the e5 pawn because bishop a2 and then queen d5. So you swap, knight g3, rook e8, bishop g5. This is a bit surprising. Bishop g5, get rid of the bishop, give knight h5. It's like, it leaves the impression that white was not sure of what she was doing. And then knight d2, and after g6, everything goes back. bishop f8. Actually, f5 was worth considering, kind of restricting white's knights quite a bit. Instead, bishop f8, bishop g7, queen f3. Black has absolutely no reason not to trade the queens. I believe just swapping on f3, quite possibly going b3 in this position. It actually makes a lot of sense. b3 because white doesn't really have a comfortable reaction. Well, the structure will be absolutely destroyed if you capture or let black capture on c2. And if you go c3, then it means you have the weakness on d3. So some moves like rook a to d8, and then trying to double the rooks. Go f5 just to make sure the knight on g3 is not doing much. And black knight, for the time being, can stand on a5. Not the best piece, of course, but yeah, it does something. It protects the b3 pawn. It might jump to c4 if white ever decides to move the d pawn. So black solved all the issues in the opening, that's for sure. Right, moving on to boys under 18. And here, let me try to recall. Yeah, to remind you, that's only one semifinal is currently in progress in under 18 section. So the other one will be postponed, and perhaps we will know the result tomorrow, but for the time being, I don't even know who the players are. So there have been some issues. Okay, so here, Shant Sargsyan, who is an ELO favorite in this game, right? So by kind of 150 ELO points, failed to win with black in game one. So now let's see how he's going to do with white. So over here, there was, there was a Dutch defense with knight c3, and white was allowed to play e4. So typically, this is, well, better position for white if played properly. Bishop to h4, h6, yeah, because white was threatening knight g5. Castles here, interestingly, I don't know if I'm giving away any kind of secrets, but there is a plan of going bishop d7, and in response to white's bishop g3, that's clearly what white's planning, to play bishop g3 to fight for e5 square. So bishop d7 in response to white's bishop g3 to castle long. And then if you look at the position at the mirror, you'd understand that it's not a Dutch defense, but a Sicilian. It's kind of, if the sides would confuse the flanks. And even this one, like, think of, neither variation mirrored. So that's g5, and instead it be b5. So yeah, that's a very tough position to understand. That's essentially what I'm saying. That should be fine for black as long as he's careful about preventing white's invasion on e5. And I'm afraid black was not careful enough, because now white has bishop to b5 move. Maybe that's not that simple, because bishop b5, yeah. The point of bishop b5 is clear. You want to take and then put something on e5, right, and seize e5 square for yourself. But yeah, but after a6, a6 might not be all that great, because bishop takes, and there's a check on e6. So bishop b5, what do you do then? What do you do then after bishop b5? Well, perhaps g4, trying to dilute the knight away from... It's kind of drive the knight away from e5, right? Could be. Anyway, that's a very, very tense position, and it will be, kind of the result will be determined in the next few moves. Okay, and girls under 18. As I was saying, in under 18 section among girls, we have 3 representatives of United States of America, and Yelizaveta Solzhenkyna from Russia. Yelizaveta won her game 1 with black, so she only needs a draw against clear ELO favorite Carissa Yip in order to secure, not only to secure the place in the final, but also to knock out the top seed. And yeah, and it seems that black went for, well, people call it modern defense, but yeah, let's call it a suspicious defense, if I'm perfectly honest. well, perhaps white didn't play the most challenging setup, but still, like black certainly takes risk by playing this way. E6, knight to f4, and d5. Still very interesting, right? Takes, knight to f6, bishop e3, okay, h3, bishop to b5, queen a8. Yeah, feels quite possibly white somewhat misplayed it a bit, because now he will have to react, he'll have to defend his d5 pawn, but still, you know, all the fundamentals work in white's favor. So more harmonious setup of the pieces, potentially some squares, like knight d4 is a very serious move. Knight d4 with the idea to play knight c6. White might consider going rook c1. So objectively, white's position has to be good, but at the same time, under the circumstances, I imagine Elizaveta Solozhenkina would prefer to have somewhat drier position on the board in order to, you know, to kind of have control over the game, because in positions like that, when everything is hanging, when you know, anything can happen. And that's exactly what you don't want to do when you have the white pieces in the knockout tournament in game 2 and you only need a draw. You don't really want to play wild chess. Right, and in the second semifinal, actually, nothing is about wild chess. That's on contrary, super solid display by both players. And you know, if it be, say, in some super tournament, then all the spectators would give players, you know, this understanding note. I know where it's heading. You guys want another draw, but not here, of course, because both players, of course, looking for a spot in the final. Therefore, yeah, I believe it's just that white decided to take this line where practically zero risk involved, and at the same time, if black is not careful enough, you might as well get some slight advantage. So knight to b4 and a to a3 was played, yeah, understandably. The a2 pawn was hanging. Knight d5. Now, well, it's bishop f3, right. Knight d5 is somewhat a risky move, I have to say, because, you know, of course, the knight is quite nice in the center, but white has a couple of really nasty threats. e4 hitting the knight, and at the same time, white wants to double attack two minor pieces, so e4 is clearly a threat. And secondly, knight to e4 is once again will be a very, very annoying move to face. Like, for instance, if black plays h6, you might as well go knight e4. And then at the very least, white is getting a pair of bishops, because bishop c7, knight c5 seems even worse, right? So white simply gonna... Oh, bishop c7 was just a blunder, because white also could have taken on f6 after gf6, just take on c7 or take on d5, then on c7, yeah. So it clearly means that, yeah, you know, after bishop f3, I do realize that black is, in fact, in quite a bit of a trouble. And those symmetrical positions, they're quite tricky, because, you know, it feels, well, what can happen? It's a symmetrical structure. It's already an endgame. Let's just peacefully exchange everything on the c file and d file. Let's agree a draw and all be happy. But no, not exactly the case. And let's not forget that it's only queens that are exchanged. So in reality, it's a queenless middle game, and this king on e7 might not be entirely safe. Okay, so the potential for this game to explode as well. And the more Thalias Cervantes, the player with the black pieces, is spending her time, I can imagine. I mean, the more I think that it's apparently a very, very unpleasant position for her. Right, let me see. Open under 18. After queen g7, white actually took an absolutely different approach to Sean Sargsson, that is b4. So b4 and b5, like manually removing the knight from c6, just go away knight. and I want this e5 square. So b5, a6, b4, a6, a4. So once again, preparing for b5. Knight to e7, voluntarily removing the knight, and b5 nevertheless. b5, knight to f5 now. Both bishop e5 and quite possibly knight e5 should be better for white. Not sure how much better. For instance, the case of knight e5, yeah, bishop e5 was played in the game. Knight e5 would allow black to trade here first, trade on e5, and if you want to keep the e5 square for yourself, so it means you have to take with the rook, and then black might be first to start counterplay, like rook a3, you know, and all of a sudden the e6 pawn, despite it being technically a weakness, right, it's well protected, and black starts his initiative on the queen side. So instead, bishop to e5, queen f7. Now white, you know, it's quite amazing that, right, both sides executing the same idea, fighting for the e5 square. So white expanded with b4 and b5, chasing away the knight that used to be on c6, and black with g5 and then potentially g4 was trying to drive away the f3 knight from e5 square. Hence h2, h3, stopping g4 for good. All right, so let me switch to ladies' game. Garifulina against Rakshita Ravi. Well, Garifulina just plays like extremely fast, and they've gotten a very, very funny position here. H5, rook to b1, protecting the b2 pawn, rook to b7, and rook to d1. What does that supposed to mean? Because honestly here, like, it's an equal number of pawns. So that means white is simply worse. Okay, for some reason I thought white is a pawn up, and I thought he might as well try to get the other one with rook a1 and rook a3, but then black apparently goes bishop h6. After rook a3, just captures that one and has little to worry about, because, yeah, the rook on a3 is really, really funny. Right, so Rakshita Ravi seems to be in full control not only of this game but of the match. To remind you, she has won game 1. In the other semi-final, Bibisara Osabaeva, after making a draw with white, she is somewhat worse. No, she's clearly worse with black, because there is no h-pawn. Where did the h-pawn go? Where did the h-pawn go? So black has blundered badly by playing rook c6. What a terrible oversight. Bishop takes h6, point being you can't really take because knight f6, knight e8. So that's why rook c6 is bad. And the second reason why rook c6 is bad, because after bishop d5, e d5, the rook is actually hanging on c6. So that was a really, really unlucky move. Basically, if you skip the move, there was no bishop h6. But yeah, that's actually a very, very popular mechanics, so that you really make your position worse with your last move, so that you blunder with your move. It's like before that, if you skip, if you say pass, please move again, there's nothing that bad that can happen. Okay, perhaps white is slightly better, but no big thing. Okay, so after realizing that not only white has the better bishop and the better pawn structure, but he is also a pawn up. Yeah, that's clear. White has all the chances. So trade here, rook to b8, and then yeah, that typically you play g3, h4, expanding there, go king g2, and yeah, you try to create a passed pawn or seize as much space as possible. Objectively, it has to be a winning position for white, but we'll see, of course. Right, let me see, anything else that's going on? No results just yet. No result just yet, but yeah, the lower I'm going, like into younger ages, of course, the positions are picturesque here. Yeah, let me see what happens in under 12 section. Samunenkov against Jakub Siemen. Actually, that's already quite hard to tell what opening that was. It looks much more of Benko Gambit or Volga Gambit, if you prefer, than the actual Benoni that was played in the game. Right, so white is a pawn up, but black is certainly not without a chance. And I imagine for shorter time controls, one tends to prefer black because, yeah, a lot of initiative. Knight to d7, knight to e5. White really weakened his king side. So regrettably, pawns are not moving back because I would, like, kind of from positional standpoint, I would suggest g4, g3 to be the move, right? Like kind of to cover some dark squares. Queen a6 to a5. Well, so the point is that knight b4 was an actual threat. I perfectly understand that, but anyway, if you have to make a move like queen a6 to a5, that apparently something already went wrong for you, feels super uncomfortable. Knight to d7, exactly, and then queen here, bishop here, knight here, or knight here. Everything goes black's way. So I will not be surprised if Jakub Siemen will manage to, to level the score and to go for a tiebreak. By the way, let's not forget, so that's game 2 out of the semifinals. And after game 2, if the score in the match is 1-1, there's only one tiebreak game, Armageddon, where white gets an extra minute, black gets draw odds. Yeah, to my shame, by the way, I have no clue how the colors are determined. Apparently some drawing of lots online. Checking what happens in under 10 section. Wow, some attacking chess. Yeah, white's completely winning. I thought white has sacrificed the piece. For a bit, I thought white has sacrificed the piece, and it looked like a promising attack, but by the head counter, you can also say that white is up some material. So no surprise, he's completely winning. White is completely winning here. Okay, let me see. Yeah, all the games are in progress. That's impressive, even though some of them are absolutely clear, like here, girls under 10, black is just up a piece. I don't know. I've missed them. Yeah, I've seen. That's actually, it seems like an opening trap, right? Bishop g5, black played f6, and then knight c6, and then g5, and then g4, and e5, e3, and then f5. Looks ridiculous, right? So white just captures here, and boom, bishop e7, and you can't save the knight on h4. That's impressive. That is impressive. And now current position is such, and black is, of course, completely winning. I'm coming back to this match on the 12 between Samonenkov and Jakub Siemen. I don't know how to pronounce it. Knight takes b2. How could it happen? Yeah, queen to a5, knight d7, bishop e3. So white tries to preserve the bishop, but there is a feeling like white's pieces are hanging in the air. Rook to b1. I was wondering if bishop c3 was possible here. That would lead to some really, really obscure tactical sequence where white captures on c3, black goes knight a4. Now, if you move the queen, black trades on b1 and jumps to c3, wins an exchange, but white can capture on b8, sacrifice the queen, and then after king g7, he has bishop d4 and wins the knight on c3. So, long and well calculated by Igor Samonenkov, but his position still is not very optimistic, I have to say. Knight d3, white trades on b8, goes bishop e2, so black just needs to find... I feel like it might as well be that black is just completely winning. He just needs to find what you'd call the final blow, right? Quite possibly bishop c3 wins, by the way. Bishop c3, queen c3. Give a check, king h2 perhaps you need to play, and then queen e4. And I do realize there is a check, right? I do realize there is a check, but knight b8 holds this rook. And I mean, protects the king, and queen h1 is a serious threat. How serious is it? Not sure though. Maybe the king runs away. But yeah, but if you're aware that there are lines like that, you do feel that something went wrong for white. And black is absolutely not forced, of course, to capture on c3, and might as well just consider some move basically bringing more wood into a fire, like knight c5. Just add one more piece, threaten knight e4. So yeah, I feel there will be a tiebreak in this semifinal. So there are some results. Girls under 12, white won in this position. Not sure. Not sure what has happened here. So queen to e3. Black blundered the funny thing. Black decided to protect the king and kind of open the file here. Play the 5. And after capture and pass on queen g5, it turned out that not only g7 is hanging and the rook is hanging. Let's not forget the g7 pawn is pinned, but also you can't play rook f7 because the other rook is hanging with the check. So black had to resign. In the second semifinal there, the fight is much tighter. So only some positional gains for black, I would say. Honestly, it looks like a very attractive position. It's kind of a dream scenario French defense, even though, and all the, all the dream scenario French defense positions typically happening not from French defense. So no surprise, it was a Caro-Kann. So that's why black doesn't have this terrible bishop. That's why black doesn't have this terrible bishop. Yeah, so you have all the benefits of the French structure, like everything's compact. White has some weaknesses there, but you don't have this terrible bishop on c8, which is a very common occurrence in French defense. I'm not sure of rook f8, because now after knight f4, you actually have to watch out for knight g6, I hope. Player with the black pieces will not blunder this one. I would prefer just to go to c8 here and let the rook protect the f7 pawn on the 7th rank. Okay, let's move on. We have more games to cover. Gukash with black against Denis Lazavic. I think he is in full control. Gukash, that is. Because to remind you, white, in order to stay in the match, white needs to win this game. And to me, it seems like nowhere near that white's going to win. Last move being rook h7, though, is somewhat surprising if you ask me. Because maybe it's just fine. I thought he was not forced to go. It's kind of as long as the rook is on e7, it controls e4, right? It secures black's ability to capture on e4 with the piece if white starts to trade there. After rook h7, I'm somewhat worried about this, let's say. And if the pawn takes, then white all of a sudden gets a nice square for the king on g3. Right guards h2 and possibly, okay, that's arrow, has nothing to do with the reality. King g3, cover h2 square, and maybe try to intercept the h file or go to f1. White decided to go to h1 immediately, also makes sense. Right, so in fact, the rook on a5 is somewhat stuck, right? Okay, trade here. Yeah, what I would do, I would try to keep the bishop, right? Some possibly capture on f3 and then just go bishop g8. Making sure that the rook is not invading. Rook h8 can be met with king g7. And then we return the rook back. Yeah, still has to be absolutely solid. Second semifinal in this age group, boys under 14, Volodar Murzin with white. To my shame, I don't remember how did first game finish, but you guys can check it on the official website, world2020.ge. Right, so what's here? Well, seems kind of a free roll for white, right? So symmetrical structures, same material, but white attacks at the same time, kind of simultaneously attacks f7 and c6. So checking h2, the question is if black can survive. Perhaps have to mention that rook a1 Actually, yeah, queen e8 was played. Rook a1, even if it would be played with queen on e1, threatens only one check. So you shouldn't be scared of such things. Yeah, queen e8 at least keeps the material equal for now. But after rook e7, it's once again a challenge for black. And how do you actually proceed from there? You can swap the queens by going queen b8 or queen c8, right? But it doesn't necessarily solve all of your problems, because rook e7 will be played, and after this trade, once again, white's queen is substituted by the rook. Rook on c7 once again pressurizes both pawns. Black, in fact, went queen f8, and white proceeded with rook e7. Yeah, seems quite tough. Seems quite tough for black. Let me see if there is anything else sharp going on. Yeah, this. Well, that's a funny position in a boys under 12 second semifinal, because yeah, it looked very sharp. I don't remember. I think Bachen Go won game 1, if I'm not mistaken. So he only needs a draw. According to my calculation, he only needs a draw in order to qualify. But it's one mess of a position, right? Because I've no clue what assessment there is. I mean, it can be winning for white, it can be winning for black. Like, okay, unlikely to be winning for white because the a-pawn is not that dangerous just yet, but it's quite easy to imagine white winning this one if black is not careful, right? At the same time, now, for instance, knight h7 is a threat of checkmate in 1. So at first, white really has to do something about it. He has a draw, I imagine, by capturing on f6. And then perhaps I have to say that gf6, king h6 now seems to be quite safe for white. Unless there is... That's once again, it's a mess, right? h4, g4 is quite dangerous. If you take go bishop h5, then some knight d6 happens. This probably means black is winning. Okay. So what has happened? White played f5, e5, then swapped on f6. And black decided not to take with the pawn. I'm really surprised, because now it looks like a draw, right? Rook b8, king e7, knight h7 is still a threat, of course. Rook back to b7, king back to f8. White went rook h8, so perhaps it means, perhaps I've misremembered, and perhaps it means that white needs to win, because white could control a draw by giving more checks, right? Rook to b7, what they do? King d6, rook takes, and white king gets the square on g6, and no longer a checkmate. No longer a checkmate. I mean, it might as well be still that it's black who is better off to say e4, but at least it's not a checkmate. And rook h8 can hardly be better, right? Rook h8, black still has e4. After you move the bishop, black goes e3 and e2. Not to mention that, yeah, black might as well spend some time trying to checkmate the king. Rook h3, bishop to c6. Okay, now I think it's simple enough to just capture on g3 and then give a check and say attack the bishop or win the f-pawn. So black is winning here. I'm wondering if the same evaluation applies to Samonenkov against Siemen. Here, if you remember, there was a very, very sharp Benoni. King g2, knight e5, and as I was saying, it really seemed that black will get to white's king, and this knight b5 is certainly in the wrong direction. Certainly in the wrong direction. h5, f3, blundering knight takes f3. King f3 runs into queen h3 check. Yeah, bishop f2, knight e1. King goes here. Who has outcalculated whom? That's the big question. Who has outcalculated whom? Because now, bishop e5. He has blundered bishop e5. No, that's game. That's game. Bishop g3 or just queen h3. What do you think, guys? Queen h3. Yeah, it's played. It's actually both very low on time. That's a very exciting game, by the way. Yeah, black should be winning completely. King f1, among other things, I believe f5 should be quite, not the rook, but f5 should be quite strong. White has rook g2. Yeah, that's correct. But then after queen takes e4, not only black is attacking, but he is also, I mean, he kind of eliminates all of white pawns. Black can take on d5. Black can and probably should take on d5, and he'd be with 5 pawns against the knight. White king absolutely having like no place to go. Bishop f4, queen d1. Okay, you don't have a choice. Basically, it's like you're not asked. You just play only move. Bishop d2. Okay, if it works, it actually is an improvement. For some reason, I thought bishop d2 was not possible. Yeah, bishop d2, trade, and still queen d5. I don't see the reason not to. Just take on d5. And then here, can white really go crazy and play some sort of queen h6? I mean, hoping, obviously it's somewhat of a naive move, but hoping for queen b5 and then rook g6 and a perpetual, which actually would mean that white qualifies. Let me see. The timer has stopped, so I'm wondering if... Oh, no, everything's okay. King to h7. So I'm double checking if there are... I mean, obviously there are other games going on, but if there is something like ultra exciting that we immediately have to switch to. Not really. I believe that's kind of the biggest thing happening. Also, Gukesh might be in a bit of trouble, rather a lot of trouble, and Denis Lazavic might level the score. That's also that'd be a big surprise, by the way. That'd be a big surprise here. So also very important game, and very sharp one as well. Right out of this seemingly equal ending, white perhaps, so I can say, outplayed his much higher rated opponent and now has all the chances to win. Okay, Samonenkov is completely lost, I'm afraid. Knight d1, rook c2. Yeah, rook c2 should seal the deal. I'm amazed, though, that this pawn on d5 survived for such a long time. Queen e5 check. Black prefer for some reason. Okay, hoping for, I don't know, wanted to say hoping for rook g3 now. Obviously, nobody's going to play rook g3, right? Rook g3 loses not only to rook c2, but to h4 as well. Really surprised. Back to g1. Now rook c2. White can actually take. Back to d4, back to h2, of course. Let me see, what else do we have? Okay, boys under 16. I'm amazed that Swane against Frederick Swane against Andrew Hong, they're still playing, but still no chance for Andrew Hong to win. Funny enough, yeah, it's black who has to win in order to level the score in the match. And funny enough, white is ready to get rid of his entire army just to make sure that the rooks are traded and the king is on time on h1, right? Black has kind of a bishop of a wrong color. Okay, that's honestly don't remember what was the result of game 1, so obviously that's a very tense position with chances to blunder for both sides. I'd say that potentially black is the side who's playing for a win, but yeah, the knight is known to be a tricky piece. So just like play a couple of silly moves, and here you go, and it's already white who is trying. Under 18, Shan Sargsyan, will he fail again to beat Golami Orimi? He might as well. Yeah, he might as well fail, because now I don't see how white... I mean, white has the perpetual, that's clear. Yeah, we're clear about that. White has the perpetual, but there is no way to move the knight and not to get perpetualized by black, right? Like, I don't really see. I mean, you probably can move the knight in such a way that you're not getting checkmate, like knight g1, for instance. But where is the safety for the king? I have no clue whatsoever. So I believe objectively White has to go with check, check, check all the time. No, he actually did play knight g1. Okay, we'll see. Carissa Yip, I believe, is about to level the score, so we will have a tiebreak here. So she lost with White, but then with Black, she managed to, I don't know, regain the composure and, well, to strike back. Extra exchange and a winning position. Of course, one needs to be careful. King d3, well, f5 pawn is hanging, but king e6 is there to the rescue. Yeah, extra exchange, and shouldn't be that difficult to convert. Let's put it this way. Well, actually, rook h1 is perhaps a little bit still rook h1. Yeah, you just go rook h1, pick the h pawn, and you win. So there will be a tiebreak there. And yeah, games are finishing one after the other. Let me see about the other semifinal. Garifulina is eliminated, and so is Asabayewa. So big news in girls under 16 section. The top seeds made it to the semifinals, and like at the start of this broadcast, I was talking about how they are very likely to meet in the final, and none of them went to the final. Okay, so let me see. Carissa Yip is about to level the score, and in the second semifinal, remember I was talking how promising Annie Wang's position looked. Guess what? She lost with White here. I don't know if that was, yeah, perhaps now e4 was, well, a little bit too naive, but yeah, e5, bishop e5, bishop takes, bishop f. Wait a second. Check. Aha, and she has lost that. Check. Rook to c1. So two minor pieces against the rook, and somehow black has won it. Okay, so Thalia is in the final, and she will be waiting for the result of this tiebreak between Solozhenkina and Carissa Yip. Yeah, Carissa actually won in a really funny manner. So in the final position, the knight is trapped on h1. Okay, boys under 18 are still playing. Let me see what happens there. How many games are running at the same time? We still have both open semifinals under 16. Murzin is still playing, tries to win. Oh, well, actually, Igor Samonenkov all of a sudden has a chance in under 12 section. I don't know how he did survive how he survived and didn't get checkmated. Remember this position where his king was kind of absolutely alone against all the black pieces, and before that there was also a bishop attacking and this and that. Anyway, so now it's an endgame where he has a knight against 3 pawns, and I do understand the passed pawns look very, very scary, but there is a chance. There is definitely a chance. I mean, like knight f2, try to sell your knight as, as expensive as possible, and like try to, well, ideally eliminate a couple of black pawns. A knight d2, which feels like a move a little bit away from the, but maybe knight f2 would have ran into h3. Okay, so what to do now? Yeah, the knight on d2 is really, really an unlucky piece. I believe it really depends if white can or cannot play knight c4, check, rook d2. Basically, that's the biggest question, kind of. That's the biggest question. Okay, white decided not to. White has given a check on d5, king g6. I was wondering about king f4, but perhaps was not that much of an issue. Knight e4, black needs to find a way to connect all 3 passed pawns. It's kind of to play f5, h3, I'm not that certain about. Do you start with h3 or you first try to play f5? Rook e3. I believe it's a time to put the knight on f2. I mean, come on. Knight f2, attack the g4 pawn. knight f2, yeah. f5 now. That's very tense, and especially playing this position on seconds. f5, yeah. Let me see what happened in Gukesh's game. That is boys under 14, right? Let me see. Gukesh has lost, so we will see the tiebreak. Yeah, I was thinking that this match is decided, but no, we will see the tiebreak. Murzin, however, won his second game, and he is in the final. He's waiting for the tiebreak between Gukesh and Denis Lazavic. So here, it's one of the last games that are still running. So we have that one. We have both boys under 16 playing, both semifinals. So that one was, I still don't know who's playing for a win. It's like white is up a pawn, but black is about to capture the a3 dude, and and the second semifinal is, yeah, once again, it's a little bit too funny, because I do understand you need to level the score, you need to play for a win, but let's be honest, you don't play this position. So I really hope that there'll be no accidents and it will be just a draw. I mean, rook and bishop versus rook, I understand, but when both sides, yeah. And regrettably, bishop c7 doesn't work because the bishop is pinned, right? Okay, so we'll not go back to this one. Boys under 18 are still playing. Shan Sargsyan managed to escape the perpetual, and he's up a pawn in the queen's ending. Honestly, I don't like black's last move, queen c4, because you know what? It allows white to play. It allows white. He goes king f2. I actually thought it allows white to play king h4 and then threaten kind of couple of checks and in the right moment to invade with the king to h5. Because king f2, well, maybe he's planning some sort of like check, pick the f pawn. White is not without a chance. Yeah, it's a very hard technical task, obviously, but white's not without a chance. Queen to c6, I believe you put the queen on e3 for now. Put the queen on e3, and then, yeah, but still, I cannot explain why would you keep the king on f2? Yeah, but on seconds, of course. I mean, it's very easy to ask such questions when you're commentating, but on seconds, and then when a lot is at stake, obviously. Yeah. King to e3. Is he trying to get the king to d2? Which is a little bit strange, right? You get the king to d2, you get checked from a2, and your best bet is just to go back to e3. Okay, so this is going, then this guy is playing rook and bishop against rook and bishop. Here, black apparently will save a draw by capturing on g4, for instance, and going rook c5, that's enough. And I want to go back to this game, Samunenkov against Jakub Siemen, because I believe all of a sudden white might have a draw with knight takes g4. He missed it. I guess. So here he went rook d3. What's that? Knight g4 was a draw. Am I right, guys? Look, knight g4, doesn't matter what black takes with pawn or the king. You have rook d2, and then if black captures the rook, it's a stalemate. If he doesn't, you win the g-pawn. You win the h-pawn, and g-pawn doesn't really win. So white already missed a chance, and let's see what happens next. It's still on this motif. Yeah, just take on g4, go rook d2. Take on g4, go rook d2, and it's a draw. Just the trick is to consider this one for a bit, and then you realize that it's there. But apparently he doesn't see it. Knight g4 makes a draw, but yeah, on the applet it's yeah, white is waiting for black to take, hoping that there is a perpetual. It's still there. You can still take it. It's still there. By the way, okay, and finally he finds it. Finally he finds it, knight g4. So let's see what black will come up with. Black, of course, yeah, I can imagine how Jakub Siemen feels now, because it was clearly an absolutely winning position for him. Okay, check on a1, but then we all know it's a drawish position, right? White actually has the rook already there on the third rank, kind of controlling the Philidor position, right? Yeah, and finally, in boys under 16, I suspect that Jose Gabriel Cardoso needed to win with black, so that's why he was avoiding simplifications, and then white has found absolutely unnecessary but a nice way to simplify and to make sure that he will not lose. Yeah, knight to a4, knight to b2. Andrew Hong is okay, guys, that's unfair. Seriously, I mean, you shouldn't be playing this. Move 61, move 96. Nothing will happen, obviously, and the draw will be, I believe, automatically awarded as the result of this game in 12, 13 moves. But yeah, I understand kind of a fighting spirit, everything, but there are positions that you can win and there are some that you cannot. Yeah, actually, so we have 3 games in progress. Both games in under 16 open make, honestly, pardon me if I'm ignorant, but make no sense whatsoever. White offered a draw and black declined here. And then, yeah, white offered a draw with the same material 40 moves ago. But yeah, but in under 18 section, that's quite interesting, in fact, because Shan Sargsyan is still a pawn up in this queen's ending, and he is looking for a chance to upset Mahdi Gholami Arimi, right? First game finished in a draw, so if white wins this one, he is in the final. If it's a draw, they'll have to play the Armageddon. Actually, not sure why a check on h7 and not queen e5. Because queen e5, and you'd force black to play queen d7, and maybe somehow the Zugzwang will come. Yeah, both funny games are still in progress, by the way. Funny games being those that I've mentioned, yeah. Can you imagine? So this one is still in progress. A white offered a draw and black declined, guys. I mean, please stop it. Please stop it. This shouldn't be played. Here, eventually black's gonna lose this one. Eventually black's gonna lose this game. If he's persistent enough not to, not to play rook d4 or rook d3, he's going to lose. Rook c8, yeah, come on. That's a funny one. Rook c8 and rook b8, and it's a stalemate. I hope for this to finish, yeah, like that. All right, Sargsyan apparently is winning because he's now up 2 pawns, and centralized queen on d5 secures, any kind of surprises, so won't happen. And I really don't understand what happens in the other semifinal under 16. You don't really play this position with increment, guys. Even kind of more funny. I mean, I just pre-moved, like my king is on a dark square, so no check whatsoever. So I just pre-move million moves with knight d1, knight e3, or whatever it is, and back to e3. I don't really understand why would you play that. And those are actually serious chess players, right? Eventually, it's a draw. Yeah, I imagine it all has something to do with player with the black pieces needing to win in order to level the score. Okay, we are left with only one queen's ending, this one, where white is winning, but he still needs to be a tiny bit careful. I'm wondering if white actually needs to capture h6. So say king goes to c8, and if you capture h6, you might run into some series of checks. Not really, in fact, because you'll have queen d2, but maybe you are not able to keep the h5 pawn. Maybe that's the trick, right? So you can You can secure that there is no perpetual, but you are unable to keep the h5 pawn. Maybe that's the... All right, it didn't happen. So white keeps the queen on d5, which I thought was correct at first place because he already had this position with... I'm not sure where black king was, but white already had the queen on d5. And this is the moment typically when you try to move the king forward. So it's very important with such material and also in queen endings with extra passed pawns. Well, here it's two connected, even if it's only one passed pawn. It's very important to kind of keep your entire army connected. So queen in the center, protecting all the kind of pawns on the sides, and also not to leave your king alone, right? Because, yeah, like if it would be a rook ending, what would you play? You play c4, c5, and those pawns are deciding the game on its own, right? But you don't really want to leave the king alone in the queen's ending because there will be a lot of checks, and a perpetual at the end. All right, so let me see what has happened in maybe some picturesque final positions. Not that many, to be honest. A draw for Samonenkov, and he is through. He survived a really, really incredible game. So congrats to my countrymen. And yeah, pardon if, yeah, I was perhaps, yeah, that's my fault. I was a bit biased in this game, but you know, that's the only Ukrainian left in the tournament. So once again, I hope there's no problem that I was somewhat supporting him after, you know, Kirill Shevchenko got eliminated, as far as I know, yeah. Anything else? Murzin has won. Girls under 14. Ah, well, that's a beautiful position. That's a beautiful position. White has somewhat more queens, and would you believe those queens were actually there for quite some time? Queen a6, queen f1. Ah, yeah, fair point. Well, you see, with opposite colored bishops, even like an extra queen can't really stop you from your opponent attacking your king. Queen h4, queen f... Okay. I mean, if you have to make a move like queen c7, queen e8, yeah, that's... that's a beautiful move. That's a beautiful move. Queen... How often you take on h6 like that and black cannot capture back? 2 pins. Not 1 pin, but 2 pins. Okay. Let's go back to Sargsyan and Golami Orimi. Now it's you know, it's a tricky moment because I hope that other tiebreaks won't start, because if they will, that'd be a disaster, because I need to rearrange things in order to show the tiebreaks. And this game, it seemingly can last forever. Speaking of lasting forever, there is a slight danger for white that he will forget. Now he won't forget about 50 moves rule. Yeah, I thought, could it be that he'll forget about 50 moves rule, but not really. It's move 92, and currently move 92, I mean, where white captured the last pawn, and now it's only move 106, 107. So lots of checks again. It's important not to go, I mean, not to do anything silly, like go into c5, for instance. After queen a5, you resign because you are forced to c4 and then queen a2. And believe it or not, but even in kind of over-the-board serious tournaments, some stuff like that happens when fatigue kicks in, and yeah, you play, as I'm saying, this kind of games you basically play forever. Right, even if you can't make progress. I mean, here it's very hard to believe that white cannot make progress, right? He always has like a couple of checks and the move that improves the position. So now, for instance, there is no check to the king on c5, right? So first, now obviously the h5 pawn is hanging, but if you give a couple of checks like queen g8, queen f7, protect the h5 pawn, and then you can go king c5, and then the king is okay, fair enough. You can also grab another pawn. Fair point. Black should be looking, In fact, black should be looking for some stalemate ideas as well. Like imagine the king in a corner, and then all of a sudden black gives queen b6 check like that. I mean, obviously impossible, but just if you think of it, right? So instead of having the king on c8, and once again, let's not forget, it's not the rook ending and you're 3 pawns down or 2 connected passed pawns down before that. So it's not like your king on c8 will help you to stop the pawns. So you should be looking for swindles. You should be looking for those sudden chances, perhaps. So, and by that point, white has given too many checks, and you, with black, you already could have had the king on a8. Okay, queen a7. Now the question is, do we want, and probably the answer is yes, we want to play queen b6 so that the queen is next to the king, and also there are possibilities of counter checks, right? So we put the queen on b6 first, and then we see where to go. Because queen on the 6th rank is somewhat, okay, he decided for king d5. You know what? Could it be that it's some sort of perpetual after queen a2? I would not be surprised, because queen on h6 is really terribly placed. Queen on h6 is really terribly placed because it runs into various skewers, right? Like queen a2, for instance, yeah, up. So he went here. He went here, but where do you run away after, say, this check? You run to g7, and in case of queen b7, you have a safe square on h8. Bravo. If white's calculation was correct, then what can I say? I mean, it's well done, well played. Yeah, I don't really think white can lose on time here. I hope he controls the time, because that would have been awkward. All right, so black has captured the c3 pawn, but now it's hopeless, because and just put the queen in the center once again. First of all, there is a fair chance that the queens will be swapped immediately, right? Now you really have to be careful. Like king b7, check on d5, where the king's going. You can still go to b8 and a8, right? I mean, after queen d5 check, there is a danger of queen c5 and the queen swapped, and then the h pawn's marching forward. Actually, still don't know. Why wouldn't you just keep the queen on e5 and play h6? But how resourceful Golami is. I mean, that's once again, I would have gone king a8, just to keep this annoying little check. Just to keep this annoying little check. All right, back to b7 perhaps? Back to b7, and then it depends on what white wants. Does he want to move the h pawn forward, or possibly the d pawn? Might as well just go d5, right? Might as well just go d5 and then speculate on some queen c6, queen straight, and then the other pawn. Make sure that you're winning. Okay, we've got a portion of moves. So the king is on h7 now. The king on a5 is actually a good thing for blacks, because keeping the king somewhere around 7th rank would make it easier for white to meet a check with a counter check. But after queen c7, king g6, there is actually no check for black, because queen c2 runs into queen f5, counter check swap, the queens win the game, as well as queen g3 runs into queen g5. So king g6, and black has nothing to do but to allow white to play h7. So last chance, okay, it's not a chance, but the way to prolong the fight, you go to a4, and at least like white's pawn on the 4th rank makes sure that black can give checks without being worried about counter checks. Okay, white has won it, so Shant Sargsyan is in the final in the open under 18 group, and the game's concluded. As I said, well, once again, very, very limited time left before the Armageddon's the time trouble start time. What do you call it? Tiebreak start. So I will need to make a short break just to adjust the technical sides. If you're curious to see the results, please do so on the official webpage world2020.ge. I believe less than half of the matches went to the tiebreak. That means you already can learn some of the games, some of the names of the finalists, and maybe in some age categories already the finals are defined. So I'll take a really quick break, up to 10 minutes, and we'll be back with the tiebreaks. Welcome back, everyone, and we have 4 tie breaks of this semi-final day. It's boys under 10, girls under 10, 1 game in each section. Then it's that's actually girls in other sections. So girls under 14, and well, perhaps the most exciting, at least for myself, I'll be trying to watch the most. This match between Carissa Ip and Elizaveta Solozhenkina. Carissa showing the great skills, leveling the score with black after she lost her first game with white. Right. Obviously, when it comes to Armageddon, and the tiebreak for this tournament, it's an Armageddon game where white gets an extra minute and black has draw odds. So it's blitz game 5 versus 4. Obviously, closer to the end of the game, anything literally can happen. We can see players playing with, with a couple of pawns against the entire army trying to win on the clock. But for now, let's try to see, well, for now, it does seem to be like an absolutely normal and quite interesting, in fact, position. Right, so that was the Caracan, I assume, and white went for somewhat a rare line, pushing the G-pawn. Okay, no time to delve into details. Well, it looks like black played it in a clever way. It's kind of flexible, so that black sometimes, and very likely in this game, can actually go for a long castle, because, it's clear white pushed the G-pawn, wants to attack the king side, so why would you castle short? Absolutely no way. Right, so after g5, knight d5, I'm really struggling to find a way for white. So, well, possibly g6, right? But after g6, all of a sudden, black might reconsider his options and kind of castle short, or possibly go bishop f6 and then capture on f7. Well, the king is not perfectly safe, but at the same time, it's an extra pawn plus some knight c3, check threats. Well, I'm surprised both players taking that much time. So white played queen c4, stopping black from long castle. Intending to force black to castle short, which of course, clever decision. I just wanted to say that black might want to trade on g5, trade a pair of rooks, go king d7, supporting rook c8, by the way. So after knight d4, just play rook c8. To c8, other games, just quickly, girls under 14, that's the position where, to me at least, it seems that white is absolutely in control. Great knight on e5, extra half a minute. Black's rook on h8, well, literally all the black pieces are very passive, I believe. Knight takes c6 should win. You might as well just go for something like solid positional, like g3 first, protecting the f-pawn, knight d3 to c5, winning e6 is clearly a plan. So white is in a very good shape here. Girls under 10, Diana Preobrazhenskaya with black against Elnaska Liakmet. So what's here? Isn't white just winning? White has captured on e6, and I presume next move is knight c6, hitting the queen and also threatening queen g7 checkmate. So looks very promising for white, who, by the way, is much ahead on the clock as well. And and boys under 10, and our ELO favorite, Václav Finek, not only he was unable to beat his opponent, Rajhova Mrin Moy, but also, like with white, I don't really think white has all the good chances to win in here. So we might see a huge surprise. Just now black just captures on b3. Black really has to speed up. Let's not forget there is no increment, so you really need to speed up. And then, the few moves came at the same time, and now it's clear that black is completely winning, 2 pawns up. But it's all about the time now. It's all about the clock. And I'm coming back to girls under 18, and I think Carissa has missed something. So c5, bishop c5, knight c5, queen c6. What's that? No, wait. It's Solozhenkina who missed something, and then white played. That's absolutely ridiculous. What happens? Queen c6. she could have exchanged. That's an extra piece. Queen b4 instead, blundering the rook on h1 with a check. Here, king e8, knight to b7. That's a disaster what happens there. Right, and still, surprisingly, after such a huge blunder, the game is not over. The game is still going because, yeah, of course, like if you're talking about objective evaluation, yes, Black is winning. Black, let's not forget, Black only needs a draw, but you know, when the tension kicks in, anything's possible, right? Already like one player blundering the whole rook, and yeah. So it was basically like that. Let's just quickly let's go back. So queen to d7, knight d4. For some reason, Black decided to go bishop c5, and then it's a check, and knight b3 and c4, and she completely blundered this one, c4, and then c5, and d6 hanging with a check. And after that, you cannot recapture with the queen because bishop b4. So queen c6, just trade the queens. It's an extra piece, absolutely winning position. So instead, this blundering the rook with check. And what's that's the current position here. Right, you do have chances for a draw with white, but the problem of the Armageddon is that you actually have to win. But let's not forget also the time is very important, and Black is down to 21 seconds. By the way, in the other games, let me see, I think white is superior in girls under 14. That, I mean, absolutely winning perhaps. Not sure. Okay, I mean, a lot of stuff happens. We really have to focus on this one where Black only has 18 seconds. But isn't it a perpetual? Queen e4 now, if king goes to a1, queen a4 with a check and back to e4. So the only move not to allow the perpetual, which, by the way, means elimination. Yeah. Well, many moves. Many moves arriving. I think it's a perpetual now because king e2, queen e4, and you can't really block with the queen, right? Because a check on f4, queen e4 check, but Black is down to 2 seconds only, so it can be anything, right? And Karysaip wins on time, and you know all the tie breaks finished practically at the same time. So pardon me, I think we've missed a huge chunk of it. But that's a cruel game. What can I say, ladies and gentlemen? That's absolutely cruel game. So white, well, she has blunt. I mean, it's fair in a way, right? White was winning on move 25. And then after queen b4, queen h1, Black was winning. And then eventually, and absolutely, of course, absolutely winning position for Black, which Black was not trying to win, which Black was trying to make a draw in. All of a sudden, white simply won on time. What surprises me, though, that to me it looks like it's a first-time repetition. That's a queen c2 for some reason. Why didn't you give a check on b1? This, and that's only a second-time repetition. So she was that close. She was that close from a draw, and draw would mean qualification to the final. Girls under 14, I believe that's the only game which kind of finished logically, because white was always better, and white eventually won. Here, this I don't know if this was or was not logical, but white, yeah, okay, white has won here as well. And you know what? Black players with black pieces simply lost this tiebreak entirely. So 4-0 in favor of white. Interestingly, when I was playing tiebreaks like that, the Armageddons, I would always pick black because I thought draw odds are very, very relevant. And regrettably, under 10, I mean, I'm lost for words. I mean, if you win like this with white, yeah, I understand, according to the rules, white has won this game, but I'm a little bit sad for the player with the black pieces, who actually given the yellow favorite the tremendous fight, so holding his own into rapid games, and he was winning. He was completely winning in this game as well, and yeah, and like here, white has won this game. So. Perhaps adding a second, I mean, next time if this kind of a tournament happens on internet, perhaps starting adding a second after move 60 makes sense. That's actually what they came to in in Armageddons, in World Cup, and so on, so that there won't be something like this happening, because those young lads, they are already good players, so things like that should not happen normally. All right. Anyway, so that will be it. Only four tiebreaks today, so I believe at least as much as I could, I've covered them all. And please make sure to come back tomorrow, same time. It's 4 p.m. Central European, which is 6 p.m. my time here in Moscow, for the finals of World Online Rapid Cadets and Youth Championships. So it will be all the finals in every single category. Once again, the same system, 2 rapid games, and in a case of a tie, well, somewhat cruel, but at the same time, everyone in the same condition. So fair system. The Armageddon will decide the winner in case of a tie in the rapid. All right, so that will be it for today, and see you guys tomorrow.